Yes, we can! Andy and Eli have work to do, sharing the joy of the greater good. Farsight and Tau are loads of fun. Working together, we get the job done. Warhammer, can we fix it? 40k, yes we can!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fixing 40k. And today I'm joined with a fellow law criminal, a scallywag, a friend. It's Eli from Deadlifts for the Dark Gods. How are you doing, Eli?
I am good, Mr. Remembrancer Andy. Thank you very much for having me to talk about the glorious greater good.
Yes, today we are talking about the Tau Empire. And full disclosure, the last episode we did that I did on this series, we talked about the League of Votan, who have basically their main gripe was they have no law, they're brand spanking new. This is a complete 180 in that regard because Tau have been around since 3rd edition. They used to be the new kids on the block, but they've been established for what, like a decade?
A while
ago? Like when did
3rd
edition come out? Quite a while ago.
Yeah, it's people still see them as the new faction though, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, 3rd. Oh my gosh, I don't even know because I played 5th edition, and they were still in the 4th edition codexes. Then
came out in 98. 3rd
wow.
edition.
Holy
wow,
cow.
so they are not new by any stretch of the imagination.
Because when I started playing in like 2012 ish, people were calling them new still, and people still call them new now. And like, but I think they're starting to get
they're
more,
old enough to drink. I think.
Almost, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. They can
older than
technically
me.
have children of their own at this age. So
Nice.
it's like, oh God, right. But yeah, so Tau in a way have been dethroned as, at least in universe, the new kids on the block, because Tau have had some time they've had over a decade to have minis made and books made, doing loads of stories. They've got established lore. It's not like the Leagues of Votan where it's starting from scratch. And before we get into the nitty gritty of the discussion, what is it that you love about Tau? And if you were to convince someone who doesn't know anything about Tau, or even someone who knows Warhammer but they don't like Tau, how would you convince them to be like, this is why they're so cool, this is why you should be into the Tau?
Well, I mean, first of all, I feel like most people like mechs, but that's not really always what Tau were all about. The original Tau, which is why I think they were cool, were these very young, very alien species who were uniting aliens all around them into the cause of the greater good, led by the ethereals, these very, very mysterious, powerful masters that you barely know anything about them, but they seem to be these like benevolent beings who are guiding this race, who seem to be kind of looking for a bright future. They're hopeful in the Warhammer universe, which is very rare to be. They were kind of the only guys who were hopeful and trying to be the good guys in Warhammer. Of course, this has changed a lot now, unfortunately, but they kind of started out with the preface of being good guys in Warhammer, and they had very advanced technology for how young they were, because it's kind of just how they are. The Tau advance and evolve very quickly, so they had very cool, interesting technology, and the original look was not quite the sleek anime mechs that we have now, but it was more so these weird, boxy, alien-looking battlesuit things and these wacky tanks, all named after fish. So they had a very unique, aesthetic to them. They didn't look like anime mech type stuff. They didn't look like anything like that. They looked like their own sci-fi race that was very unique.
Do you have an idea of when it was that they kind of, forgive the phrase, but the weeaboo elements started to creep in a bit? It was like, we're going to have, katanas and
I mean,
it's all about honor.
Even in like when I was playing back in the day, it was still kind of there, because they were still kind of the mech faction, despite only really having broadsides and crisis suits and some Forge World stuff. But I think 6th edition is when it really started to kick off with the anime mech stuff, because they introduced the Riptide. Then they introduced the Ghost Keel in 7th edition. They might have even had it in 6th. I don't quite remember. But the bigger the mechs got, the more anime the crowd got, which is unsurprising, because they just kind of they kind of are just the anime mech faction now. That's their whole thing. They kind of abandoned. I mean, we'll talk about that later, though, I guess.
Yeah.
But my I guess I'll go back to why the Tau are cool. So they're very alien, very unique species with a hopeful outlook in the 40k universe, which again is very rare. They are a conglomerate of Xenos, which could have been really cool if they, continued with that. And there are still some lore moments with it. But I mean, we have the Kroot and the Vespid. The Vespid, the original Vespid, are some of my favorite models ever. They're so alien and weird looking. They're really cool. What else? They were kind of the first guys to openly seek allies in Warhammer. So you could ally them with your Space Marines or your Imperial Guard or your Eldar, which was pretty cool. That was kind of unheard of, right? The Eldar and Imperium have teamed up, but that's kind of it. And then Necrons and Blood Angels on the, I guess that's more like 6th or 7th edition lore, though, honestly.
Yeah.
So they sought allies, which is cool. Yeah, their caste system is very unique. Each Tau cast member is very different from the other one, which is also why they're not communist. It's literally a caste system, but whatever. They're the fire warriors, just the soldiers in general, the fire caste, are these very honorable, very disciplined, very strong individuals who have unfortunately been given a very bad they look very bad nowadays. But in lore, the average fire warriors is this very tough, very hardened warrior. And they're all like brothers and sisters. They go through a Telicero bond. So they're basically family. To lose a bond member is to lose like a brother or a sister, and it's very beautiful thing. They're very tight knit together. Each cast itself is very tight knit. The water cast, earth cast, fire cast, ethereals, etc., air cast. Every cast is cool. Like the air cast have their own negatives and benefits. They fly these super cool fighter jets. They tiger sharks and the mantas and the orcas and stuff. And they have these very like thin, gangly things that are basically they're like birds. Basically, they have like the bone structure and stuff made.
Yeah, they exist in like 0G, so they're quite spindly and tall and gangly. Yeah,
but they are actually some of like the most honored and revered Tau, because when they're going through space flight, they don't go to sleep like everyone else does because they have to take care of the ships. And Tau lives are quite short. They're only about 60 some years. So using some of your life to transport, the Firecast and the armies to the expansions is a very big deal. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm saying a lot of stuff. That's why I like the Tau, though. To summarize why I like the Tau, they're very unique. They're very alien. Their cast members are all very cool. Their tactics are also very modern. They're kind of like our modern tactics, very range combat, hit and run, keep your troops alive. That's why, that's another cool thing is they actually have preservation ingrained and trained in their troops, and they're all equipped for the situations and outfitted. They're not expected to go charge into combat and die.
to be fair to the Tau, they haven't engineered a sterile warrior class of superhumans to do the fighting.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, we want them to have children and lives if they succeed at war.
Yeah. They have lots of. Well, they were supposed to have lots of unique aliens in their armies. They still have the Kroot and the Vespid, which is cool. But the Kroot aren't a only Tau thing. The Kroot will work for basically anyone. But because they were saved by the Tau, a lot of them do pledge allegiance to the greater good, obviously. The ethereals were very cool, very mysterious, and seemingly benevolent beings. As I said, that's changed, unfortunately. But they have characters like Anshi and Farsight and Shadow Sun and Case, all very unique, very different characters that are. And Farsight, Case, and Shadow Sun are like the aspect, the paragon of their style of warfare. They're like the epitome of soldier, of warrior, not soldier, more like warrior. They're heroes. They're kept alive in cryo sleep so that they can only be taken out in the most dire of situations. Of course, it's different for Farsight now, but it's still the same for Case and Shadow Sun. Actually, Case has escaped and ran off, so just Shadow Sun at this point.
He did a Master Chief. He was like, wake me when you need me. Then they wake him up and it's like, you're going to try and take my AI girlfriend? I'm getting out of here.
So that... I love you, War of Secrets. Great and wonderful book with no Space Marine plot convenience whatsoever. Wonderfully made book, truly. Whatever. But okay, that's more or less why I like the Tau, I guess, in a very long-winded, rambling answer. But
that was nice. I mean, I've got a page open at the moment with all the editions of the Tau, up 1 to 10, although they haven't got 1 and 2. But when you look at 3rd edition, they launched with a lot of interesting stuff. Like the first models, like you got an ethereal, you got Kroots, you've got shield drones, pathfinders, Krutox, Aunshi, Oshovar, broadsides, like big battle suits, a devilfish, hammerhead, fire warriors, and then like Imperial Armor comes out in 2002, a year later. You've got Skyray, Barracuda, Tiger Shark. You've got tail end of 3rd edition 2 years later. Few more fire warriors. You got some more drop ships, and it's like it was a pretty big bombastic
and
start.
They had so much personality as well. The models are very unique. I love the old Envoy model. It's freaking awesome. But they're very unique, personable models.
And even the next edition, 4th edition, that's when the I believe that's when the Vespids were added. Then you got Aunvar, Oshasera, more heavy, drop ships like piranhas and ray gun ships, more battle suits. They started to realize, like, oh, people really like the battle suits.
Yeah,
the more of them come out.
Yes, yeah.
5th edition, everything in 5th edition is like, first update, here's 4 more battle suits, then 2 more and a ship, then more battle suits and more, and then it's like a fire blade, and more battle, like more armor. And then as it gets to like 7, it starts to get a bit sad because you got 7th edition. You're like, cool. You've got like the supreme battle suit,
the supremacy suit,
the supremacy suit that comes out.
Yeah, the other big one. I don't even remember what it's called.
The gigantic one. You get like breach of
Storm
teams,
Surge.
Storm Surge. You get Ghost Keel. You get all that, and then like 8th edition, you just get Oshasera, just one mini.
Yep.
And then 9th edition, you get a new Dark Strider, you get a new Oshovar, and you get some Kroot and some Pathfinders. And then 10th, it's a bit better. Lots of Kroot. You get a new Krutox, which is cool.
Yep.
You get
Kroot Ranger Fresh was pretty awesome. Actually, it was. I was really nice.
I mean, to be honest, there's only one Tau in 10th edition. That's the Invocation of the Elements ethereal. Every other miniature is a Kroot, and then there's some Vespids.
So I don't like the new Vespids. It doesn't matter. Everyone does, but I don't. It's fine.
Well, we can get into that because like now that we've mentioned about like they've had a pretty bombastic, pretty interesting start. They were kind of fitting into a corner of the Warhammer market in the universe that hadn't been tapped in, like this idea of like, oh, they're kind of the good guys and they like to make alliances. They've got all this variety of recruitable rate. I always was a bit upset that when I've learned more about the lore, some of the weird aliens didn't get like their own minis. Like, oh, here's the gloopy monster. Like, I wish he had a mini. That would be fun. It's just Kroot. It's mainly Kroot. But with that said, if we're going to fix 40k with this faction in particular, we have to identify what the problems are. So let's start with, because we're lore guys, let's start with the lore. Looking at my list of Tau books and considering they've been out for 15, 16 years, it's quite slim pickings. I mean, you've got the Farsight trilogy. Farsight also has a Arcs of Omen book, but that's a rule book / lore. So it's kind of, is that really a lore book? Not really, but it kind of counts.
I read it, but yeah.
You got the Shadow Sun book, which has its own problems with the faction.
I still have yet to read the Shadow Sun book, but I know what happens in it, and it's not great.
Well, we'll get into that. And there's the Damocles setting, which is more like, oh, you're sharing time with the White Scars and the Raven Guard. And then you've got Secrets of the Tau, which is the kids' book.
Oh, I've not read the kids' book.
And then other than that, it's just
it's like short stories.
Other people's stories. Short stories, or they're in the Caiaphas Cain, one or two of the Caiaphas Cain books.
And Greater Good, Caiaphas Cain one. I've read that. They're in the one called Cao Yan.
A couple of Uriel Ventress as well.
Yeah, Fire Warriors, the OG Tau book. Fire Warriors, one of my favorites ever.
And I was going to say they have a video game, that's cool, and they have an animation. Now the caveat is the animation's like, all things told, it's a pretty meh story. It's like 15 minutes long if you put it back to back. After you take the fight scenes out and stuff, it's just like, the Tau drop on a planet and they say, oh, Eldar, you're shifty. And then, I'm stuck in camera. That end. Cool.
Yeah.
It was very flashy. Very flashy.
I'm so behind all the animations, but I saw too many stupid freaking Krieg Krieg guy beating the stealth suit over the head with his stupid
Yeah.
shovel. Oh, it's a Krieg shovel. It's a Krieg shovel. Oh, I'm gonna coom.
They can't help themselves. They're in the Pariah Nexus as well, even though they're all like Necron possessed / maddened. They're in it just because like Krieg's fun. We'll put them in again. And yeah, and they had a video game that a quote Halo killer.
Yeah,
I remember when that game came out, guys. I'm an old man.
Funny.
I remember when they were like, "This is going to be the Halo killer," and I was like, "Oh, shut up! No, it's not." But yeah, so that's kind of where they are with the lore. It's a bit of a shame that they are basically like the side character faction, which is a bit infuriating. I'm assuming. What's your kind of perspective on how GW have treated the Tau in terms of lore, considering they've had so much time to get stuff done?
I mean, it could certainly be a lot better. It's better than the Eldar. It's better than the Eldar because they win and their characters actually get some good, I don't know, spotlight. But it's not great. Half of your choices are getting stomped on by Cato Sicarius or overly snobby Tau who you want to lose. And then there's like a couple books where they're actually enjoyable to read. But yeah, could be better, but it could be the Eldar. It could be worse.
That's a low bar.
Yeah, I did like the Farsight novels. A lot of people don't like them though. And I think I know why.
Do you know why? Because I went through them and I was like, this is fine.
Well,
I'm not a big Tau guy, but I was like, it's fine.
I've seen people say that it like ruins Farsight character. I don't know if I really agree with that, but it pretty much confirmed that the secret that Farsight finds out is that the ethereals are not benevolent. In fact, they are quite malevolent. And it kind of just ruins or malevolent, I should have said, sorry. It kind of just ruins the whole ethereals thing, and yeah, it's not great. They could have made the secret a lot different, I think.
You're not a fan of the shadow government ruling the Tau through pheromones?
No. When I was like a kid, I was like, oh, look, this proves that Farsight's right and that the ethereals are bad guys. But now as more of an adult, I mean, I guess Farsight books aren't that old, but still, how many years ago, I thought, oh, this is great. But now I think about it as like, oh, now the Tau have almost no redeeming qualities, and the greater good are the bad guys, and the Farsight's now the only good guy section of the Tau, and we're screwed, I guess.
I think the trouble with the Tau as a faction is when you look at like the Imperium as a benchmark, they've got so many organizations with so many contradictory and conflicting objectives. The Tau has the trouble of they're stuck all the way in the eastern fringes, and everything seems to be about we need to expand to become a bigger empire to be a threat. And so every plot is like, we need another sphere, we need another sphere, we need another sphere. It's like they can't have stories with them being in the far-flung corners of the galaxy because they're too contained and they can't travel very far. There's only a few. Like I know it's still like, oh, there's like a lot of Tau characters, but like considering it's a species, there's only a few of them. I mean, you got Shadow Sun and Farsight and Aunvar, and I did a month of Tau content, and a lot of my videos were very short because I was like,
there's really not a lot. There are cool Tau secondary characters too. They just have like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
Even if there's like a short story about one, then you just never hear about them again. Even on She only has like one short story, and he pops up in the Farsight books, and now he's not even in the freaking tabletop game anymore. He's Legends now. So
yeah,
even though he was the only saving grace that the Tau had, because he was an actually good guy, and they freaking canned him. So
even some of the like really like I quite liked Tao Shang, the tank pilot, and they make him a unique prototype suit so that he can integrate directly with it, and he's like, I can fight for days. And you got El Miyamoto, who's like the samurai guy who walks around like, I'm a pathfinder, I don't like mechs because they're cringe, I'm gonna stay light and move fast, and like that you could. I feel like with him, you could have a story where he gets captured by a faction like the Imperium, and it's about him escaping the Imperium as he's carted off for like, oh, we're going to like take this high-ranking Tau and like we're just going to cut him open
Yeah.
and see what makes him tick. And he's like, oh,
Yeah.
this isn't good. And he gets like taken up really far across the galaxy. And then he's like, I'm the only Tau around. I have to like hide my identity, but it's a good thing I'm good at sneaking. And you could have this whole story about, oh, he's just trying to get back to the Tau Empire by hook or by crook. And he has to make alliances with Xenos. And he doesn't know the customs and the like. You could do some really interesting stuff with that character, but instead it's just like, I'm good at stealth operations.
Yeah. Is
So,
Darkstrider even in the game anymore?
he has a new model. It's when was it released? His newer model was released.
Oh yeah. I forgot because his new model doesn't even look anything like him. That's freaking weird.
Yeah, 9th edition. So 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. So
2
he
years
is.
ago.
He is still in it. That's good. At least his new model is so drastically different than his old one, though. But whatever. But I mean, they also destroyed. My gosh, long strike's not in the game anymore. I guess we know that.
Yeah.
Even though he was a
in
new
Kankai.
edition in like 6th or 7th edition, and then they just removed him again. And
yeah, he was in 6th edition. So that's 2013 when he was released. A while ago. Him and Miyamoto were the same year.
Yeah.
So and shall we rip off the Band-Aid? So Shadow Sun, her book has this whole thing about the Tau have a god now.
Yeah, it's whoever made this decision at GW is just like, we're so screwed. It's over, Tau Bros. It's literally over. Like, I haven't read the Shadow Sun book, but I have read War of Secrets, and it talks a lot about the Tau god stuff in there as well. I'm gonna read Shadow Sun to my dismay, but I think Shadow Sun's cool, so I'll read it. But yeah, the Tau god was very unfortunate. Yeah, because that was one of the whole things of Tau and the appeals, that they don't have any psychic powers, they don't have any connection to the warp. But now a few groups of humans worshiping the greater good makes a chaos god, I guess.
Yeah,
sure.
It's like,
but
it's
Malice
like
when Malice can't show up. Malice isn't around. Like, whatever.
Well, it's like a benevolent, possibly warp creature. It's not even like a god of chaos. As far as I understand it, it was like she was traveling with like a Kroot and a human and some other species, and it wasn't so much that there was a Tau element to it, but it was like, the other species kind of worship, like the Kroot are weird and shamanistic.
And now,
but
but the worst, the worst part about it is that the Force Sphere expansion then decided they're going to kill every single alien in the greater good that isn't a Tau, because this thing exists. And so now the Tau look even worse and even more evil.
And if we're honest, how many spheres is enough spheres? Because they're on the 5th now, and I'm kind of like,
I mean,
we're gonna get to like 9th sphere, 12th sphere.
If they could tell different stories,
else?
it'd be different. Because I mean, there's been a gorillion crusades in the Imperium, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of stories that aren't just about crusades in the Imperium. So
like the Badab War, or
I love Badab. I love Badab.
Even things like Necromunda as a setting, where you've got the horror stuff, or you've got war bands trying to get by with meager provisions. Like that's a fun like.
Well,
like I say a lot. We don't need a story
made...
where it's a big laser beam shooting in the sky and it's going to blow up. It's like, just tell us a fun story. It doesn't have to be amazingly bombastic, just something.
They could have even done like a weird, didn't even have to be a civil war, but they could have done something of Farsight going against the ethereals, and they could have had like political disputes and debates and stuff. And because I don't think Farsight would spark a civil war. That's why he left in the first place. But I feel like he could have done something, I don't know, something different maybe. And then there could have been just a Tau book without anything else. But
and other than that, it's like, I can't remember the last, other than Shadow Sun, which was fairly recent. I can't remember the last book that was released, other than Arcs of Omen, which is part of a bigger thing. It's been a while since they've had like a book.
War of Secrets is kind of new, 2018, and the Farsight trilogy is also kind of new. The latest one is, at least. Let me look. Doesn't even say. Because what is the latest one? Crisis of Empire of Lies. Sorry, is it even a trilogy? Is it just 2 books?
It's trilogy, I think.
I'm trying to remember what the other one was. 2020 was Empire of Lies.
2020. Yeah,
Something.
so yeah. I mean, but he's like the premier character for the Tau, so he's got to get something. I think this was
that's
like
the
when
other issue.
well, but this is the thing, isn't it? It's like we'll talk about this in like the solving area section more, but it's like it's a shame that the Tau is literally confined to you've got Farsight and you've got the ethereals, and like Shadow Sun is part of the ethereal gang. Darkstrider and all these subsidiary characters are all still part of the Tau Empire. So it literally, in practical terms, it's literally a case of there's Farsight and then there's
Everyone
the
else.
ethereals,
Yeah.
and then that's it. There's no
and Farsight
variety.
Farsight basically is the Tau. Like even when you look at Tabletop, like the vast majority of Tau armies are Farsight enclaves from what I see. Like almost everyone runs, because he's got a cool model as well, but you rarely see generic Tau anymore. And they've written themselves into this freaking corner where Farsight is basically this like flawless character. Like he has his flaws, like being angry and stuff, but like so what? Other than that, the Farsight enclaves themselves have like nothing bad about them. They're like these just like pure, holy, untouched faction that are just
It's
the
like
good
Space
people.
Robin Hood and his merry men.
Yeah, it's like there's no downside to supporting the Farsight enclaves, but there's a million downsides to supporting the Tau Va, the greater good.
Yeah. And even the quirks that like the 8 have, she's a pyromaniac, she's a little quirky. Oh, this guy is actually an AI of a guy that's dead.
Oblitize a G. Oblitize a G.
Yeah, it's like they have quirks, but they don't have flaws.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a bit of
other than Ovesa. Ovesa is kind of a jerk. I think they did pretty okay with his character, but it's also like, why does Farsight keep this guy around? He's like basically evil, but whatever. He's useful, I guess. Ovesa has his moments. I do like him, and I don't know. Some of them have their moments, like Bravestorm and Brightsword, I think are their names. The young guy who's been cloned a bunch of times because he keeps dying. I do like him.
Yeah.
And Shavastos is kind of neat. I'm trying to remember which one is the guy with the pure tide engram chip that Farsight had to keep a secret.
Yeah. But this is another problem I think a lot of people have with Tau. You have names like Brightsword and Bravestorm and which is which, and there's a lot of character names and conventions of like the trappings of the Tau. It's very, you have to be very on point with distinguishing them, because as a casual Tau enjoyer, it's so confusing sometimes to be like they have very similar sounding names, very similar, like even the whole thing about Shasso Case is not the same as Tau Shasso Case. They're two.
He's in my heart. He is in my heart.
And I get comments on those videos like, why didn't you put these together? It's like, because they're two different characters who just happen to have the same name
and the same homeworld.
And the same homeworld. Yeah. And it's like,
I still think they're supposed to be the same guy. GW just can't write lore to save their life.
Yeah.
But whatever.
With the lore, putting the lore aside for a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Miniature wise, they're not the worst represented in the setting. They've been eating pretty good.
They have cool minis. I just think their aesthetic has drastically changed over the years.
Okay. What do you not like about the newer models? Is it just they're a bit too clean or a bit too sharp edges?
I just think they're very generic sci-fi models. Like you could put the average, you could put these Tau battle suits in, you can just show them to someone and it doesn't say this is Warhammer 40K. It says this is a generic sci-fi universe, right? Like I think I mean, it's unfortunate, but they do kind of just look like an anime mech faction from any old sci-fi anime. Like even Evangelion anime mechs are much more unique than these. Tau mechs are just Gundams at this point. Like
I must say, even the foot soldiers. I don't know why I was thinking about this the other day, but there was a fairly recent update to Helldivers 2 with the guy in the white armor, and I was like, you could put a Pathfinder next to this guy.
Yeah,
you would, unless you squinted. Especially if it was like a top-down view and you're seeing an army full of them, you wouldn't see the trappings that make you think, they're not human. They're humanoid, but they
and
pass just enough to be like, oh, that's just a human guy in a suit of armor. He's got less fingers, but you can't see it.
I know.
Difference. Like,
they also abandoned the ochre color scheme, which was also very weird and different. It was not the color you would expect to see, but now it's this like white, sleek, slender, this very clean color.
Isn't that
it's very different.
The like ethereals like personal card of Tau? It's like, oh, if you got like the white and red, it's more like, oh, you're part of Aunbar or Aunshi's.
Now it's just every Tau ever. So
yeah, especially when you look at like the old like orcas and stuff with it's like a camouflage. It's like a desert camouflage pattern almost, which is a weird choice, but I like it.
Me too. Even like their old Pathfinders and Fire Warriors don't look that different from how they are now, but it's just that they've made them so clean and like perfect without any flaws kind of on the model, which I think is just kind of just how modeling has been going recently, unfortunately, because they're not hand sculpted anymore. They're made by computers, I think. But it just kind of takes away the Warhammery aspect, and just you could put them in anything. Like you could put them in any sci-fi universe and they fit in, right? They're just not very unique in my opinion anymore.
Do you reckon this is why people love the Kroot so much? Because they can retain that these are weird, alien-looking, like the new Krootox model. Just looking at that now and the Kroot Hounds and stuff, I'm like, that's still cool. I know it's updated; it's a bit more, polished. Yeah, but you can still see the aesthetic, and you can see the way they're like. Is it the overbite of their beaks, their mouths, and the kind of dreadlock like feather quill almost combination?
Cool birdmen.
Yeah, cool birdmen. And you don't like. I'm assuming you don't like the Vespids as much because they're just a bit more.
They're just it's the same thing. They're just so generic. They're just Geonosians. They're literally just Geonosians.
Yeah, they are.
It doesn't even they don't even look. They don't even look like Vespid. They look like Geonosians with Tau helmets. It's not. That is like they're nice models. I'm not saying that they're bad models. They're just not. They just don't fit the aesthetic and the soul of what the faction of just Warhammer in general. Again, they're just a generic sci-fi bug model. They're not freaking these super wacky and weird Vespid with 6 eyes on their helmets and stuff.
I don't like the one on the. I'm looking at this picture now of the box, the new box, and there's one with just a Tau helmet thing on.
It's just, I don't like it. It looks so bad to me.
It reminds me of something, and I don't know what it. Oh, it reminds me of Portal. That's what I'm thinking of. It reminds me of Portal, the way it looks.
Yeah, that I see
mixed with like Warframe or something. I don't know. It's weird, and it doesn't look right.
I know, and I want to emphasize, like, they're not bad models. They can be good models and just not fit that well into what their niche is supposed to be. Like, that doesn't mean they're a bad model. People can't seem to distinguish the difference between good model, bad model, and fitting or not fitting within 40K. And that's how I kind of feel about the Tau, is that they're really nice models. They're all really nice, but they just don't. I feel like they've just lost kind of a lot of the soul and the aesthetic of what the Tau were originally meant to be like.
Well, with that in mind, then, I know there's a lot of debate and discussion these days of people saying, oh, I don't like Warhammer as much because it's lost its grimdark edge. You look at the Primaris, they're a lot more smooth and clean and prim and proper. But I feel like the Primaris get away with it better, though, because there's just so much. One, the Space Marine design is so iconic anyway, with the massive pauldrons.
They're still Space Marines, exactly.
They're still Space Marines, and they retain the core elements, but... Is it arguable that the Tau have it the worst as far as the more smoothing over of the rough edges of any faction, do you reckon? Or is it just this is actually a thing that's happening to a few of them?
In my opinion, yeah. Because like you look at the new Necron models, all the Necrons are still awesome. They still fit really well. I'm personally not a big fan of Imhotep because I think he just looks like a generic Necron, but he looks like a cool generic Necron, and they still all look very Necron-y, right? There's not really, doesn't seem to be a change in aesthetic, really. They are cleaner, but overall, they're still just metal skeletons. Like, I feel like there's not, I feel like you'd have to try pretty hard to mess up their aesthetic, to be fair.
It's tricky with the Necrons because there's a really strict, other than Anarchia, but there's a strict color palette of they have to have green and usually a silver or like sometimes a bronze metal. And when you come to the Necron Lords, you get some like Zandrek who has this like it's almost like an overcoat cape, and that
Yep.
makes him look more like a sage than a warrior. And
Mhm.
Oberon's just a big tanky dude.
Hulky guy, yeah. I
And
have
then
their models
everyone
right here.
else, it's a but every other model like Imhotep or even Sarek to an extent, the tricky part is even when I was doing a month of Necron content the other year, I was struggling sometimes when I was looking at the art. It's like, is that that guy or is that guy? Because they both have the same kind of helmet style.
Yeah.
With a slight deviation in shape, and
Yep.
they have similar looking capes, and it's really, it could be, especially for a newcomer, it's so
that is fair.
tricky to
Yep.
distinguish.
But like,
And
I was just say, like, if you look at their new model, so like, to be fair, I'm not a fan of the newer Overlord model. I prefer the old one with the war scythe hung out, like sticking out behind his back and holding the resurrection orb and stuff. But whatever. The new Xeris model, Illuminor Xeris, it's a Xeris, whatever, is awesome. It's amazing. Looks like Necron. It's very grim dark in his artwork and his model. He's got the guy with all of his guts flowing up towards him, right? It's super cool. And the new Orcan model is also really neat. It's very unique and cool. And it still fits in the Necrons and is kind of like what you would expect to see. Like, as much as I love the old models, I think the new Xeris is actually an upgrade from the old one. Because the old one was a little bit, it wasn't terrible, but it was a little silly. It was just like a little guy with his four spindly legs. I love it. Don't get me wrong. And the new Catan, like the Void Dragon, is really cool. I still really like the old Catan models as well. I got the Deceiver right here and the Nightbringers in the box. But yeah, I think they do really good with the Necrons.
I think I like what Terry Pratchett said about how when he was writing characters, he had a term which he called funny hats. And he was like, if you're going to write these characters, you need to give them something like a funny hat, so that even if they have a similar name, you can be like, oh, that's the guy who has the silly yellow shoes. That's the guy who has the witch hat. And what I like about, for example, Orican is like, he's the Cyclops Necron. Trazyn, he's got the hunchback. Like, you have to have a distinct, easy to identify quirk to separate some of those models. And bringing it back to the Tau, it's like, the obvious thing is like, Farsight's painted red. And he has a sword. But like, other than him, when I look at, for example, the ethereal range of models, how do you tell them apart? Anvar's got a big chair and
he's dead now anyways, so
and he's dead. But it's like, okay, like Darkstrider, he's like the scout miniature. When he was around, Longstrike was the guy in the tank. Is it capula, the term for the thing you stand at the top? The thing at the top that you peek out of. Shadow Sun has like the more like round armor, I guess I would describe it, where it's like it's not as pointy as Shadow Sun.
Does she still have the helmet option? I hope she does.
I think so, and it's got that kind of portal-esque.
Because I love her old model. I think her old model is so unique. I really, really like it. It's a lot smaller as well, the old one, and it's just kind of neat looking. But yeah,
because her whole thing is it's a stealth suit, isn't it? Like where Shadow Sun's is a crisis modified suit. Hers is a stealth one.
Okay. I see her helmeted option now. It's interesting. She has like a half helmeted option and a full helmeted option. I do like her new model. It's just very bulky.
And to be fair, her thing is she has dual wielding plasma cannon things. So that's how you identify her at a glance. You go, big gun, both hands, cool. The trouble, even when I look at the 8, one of them's massive. I can't remember which one the massive one is. The one in like the huge armor.
That's Ovesa.
Ovesa. So Ovesa's in the big suit, and then all the other ones, they're all painted.
Yeah, I know.
And they're all. Even when I did the video I did like a video on the 8. I had so much trouble finding art, and then
there's like one picture of each.
There's one picture of each, and then you're like, and then of course the girl character's got like some extra art because nerds are like, oh, girl. But other than that, it's like, how do you distinguish the bunch of them?
You just, because like all you can distinguish them by is their war gear, basically. Which I mean is fair, because I think it'd be silly if they each had their own like unique battlesuit design. I don't like that, but I also don't like the fact that the vast majority of the side characters in the Tau lore are basically just extensions of Farsight. They're not really. They're barely even like unique individuals. They're just, their lore is that they know Farsight basically. They're cool. Like there's the Black Mesa Ridge thing. The guy with the Honor Gauntlet, I don't remember. Like, I can't even remember. I think it's Bravestorm, I believe it is. He has really cool art.
Mm.
Like, he beats up those Scar Lords. He destroyed a Titan, I believe. And I think they have their moments, but not all of them have that much lore to them, though. Bravestorm had a lot of moments in the Farsight novels. And then Brightsword had a few moments in the Blades of Damocles book. Shavastos is kind of there too, but like Torchstar, she's just there. Like she like on she basically sent her over.
I like Fire.
That's kind of
her
it.
character arc.
Yeah, and then like Oblatai's really cool. Oblatai actually has a lot of history. He mentored Farsight and stuff.
Yeah.
The Stone Dragon, I keep forgetting his actual name. Ovesa he's actually in a lot of stuff, to be fair. So some of them have somewhat deep history, at least for a side character, but then some of them also just have like they're just kind of there, and this one's headstrong and has fusion blasters.
Yeah, I feel like the 8 in particular, they would benefit from what, like, for example, I was just thinking from my head, like, what if you had one of them who was like, oh, I need to etch stuff on my armor, like a kill tally or something to remind me of stuff, kind of like what what's his name, Remus? No, it wasn't Remus Ventanus. What's his name?
I don't know.
The old Marine sergeant who was in the Horus Heresy was like, I'm going to scribble things on my armor.
You have
so
mentioned it before.
Them.
I think it would also help if the 8 was maybe the 4 instead. Then they could actually go into depth with all of these characters. It could be Ovesa, Oblatai, Brightsword, and either Bravestorm or Shavastos, just one of the two. And I think they could do a lot more. And that's still 5 characters.
Yeah.
Just surrounding Farsight, including himself, of course.
Yeah. But even with like Torchstar, whose whole defining quality is I like fire, put some like tanks of something on her armor so you can be like, oh, that's where she's getting the fuel reserves. Or
give her a hazmat crisis.
Oh, this guy, like give her like something that shows off, or one of the guys, he could have like, oh, I like hunting, and he could put pelts because again, the 8 are all like, we're not Tau, we're kind of rebels. They could have things that make them look a bit different other than just I painted my armor red. It's like, oh, cool.
And they also run into the issue of like when you're reading the Arcs of Omen story, it's like, okay, Farsight did this, and Bravestorm did this, and Brightsword did this, and then Torchstar did this, and they're trying to like fit all 8 of these characters into these battles and making them do something.
It's like Captain Planet, like, oh, and there's Captain Planet, and then all of his friends who don't matter apart from they need to bring Captain Planet together. Like,
but they still have to mention all of these characters, which I don't know, like where it would have been probably nicer if they had, the 4 maybe, and they would all go off and command their own forces, and then maybe Farsight had his like number 1 Fireblade guy on the ground, like as a troop. And then like a tank guy, and then call it a day. I don't know.
Well, with that all said and done, then, so we've talked about the books, we talked about the miniatures, and here's the point in the episode where we go, okay, I'm James, your workshop. We've got to fix the Tau. We've got all the. Imagine there is no limit to how much money we have, how many writers we can, lock in a basement with a typewriter and just say, do the thing. We can do anything we want, but but for argument's sake, let's say that money is not an issue, but we have to be tactical with our approach if we want to right the ship swiftly. So let's start off with the lore. The obvious thing to say would be we just need more Tau books, but I think the underlying issue with the Tau is that there's just kind of like what I said with the Dark Rider idea. We need more stories where they interact with people other than just the Imperium and whoever tends to be just around the spheres of expansion, because as a plot line, the spheres of expansion is boring in my opinion, because all the stories are, we claimed this bit of territory and now we're slightly stronger and bigger, or we lost this sphere because of a happenstance and now we have to pull back and do a sphere in a different direction. Like, riveting. So could you, it doesn't have to be like fully formed or anything, but do you have any like fun ideas that the Tau might do that isn't just we're pushing the boundaries of our domains?
I think a large scale series where they ally themselves with one of the major factions in Warhammer to defeat a large threat, kind of like how the Blood Angels and Necrons came together to fight the Tyranids, but on a less like allies. Like that was a situation where they needed to ally with each other to survive. Like they wouldn't ally with each other under any other circumstances, right? Whereas if they put the Tau with a random Space Marine chapter, or even better, an Eldar craft world, maybe, and they went off together to, I don't know, do some big major thing that would like halt chaos or stop. I would say stop the Tyranids, but it's been done. That's so overdone. I wouldn't want to say that.
Well, speaking of Tyranids, I had an idea just now of like, what if you had, they're doing one of their annoying sphere things. You start the book by going, "Hey guys, it's another sphere expansion," and then all of a sudden, a craft world appears, and they start being like, "Hey guys, you need to like leave." What? You need to leave now. And then the Tyranids are chasing them. So then the Tau get pushed out of the sphere they're trying to conquer. The Orcs are fighting them. Orcs get, Tyranids. Hey. So then that threat kind of takes care of itself. But then you basically have the Tau maybe get chucked for a warp storm with the Eldar. And it becomes a case of like, oh, well, we're the Eldar. You need us to get back home because we know how the warp works and you're stupid. And then the Tau goes, okay, but your ship's kind of damaged and you need our technicians to fix it, or you're just going to die in the void anyway. And there's an uneasy alliance where they have to work together. That could be a story.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think it would also be interesting if the Eldar or Space Marines or whoever needed their help to fight chaos, because the Tau are very resistant to chaos up until the Arcs of Omen book, because now they can just be corrupted by Khorne.
But that might just be Farsight, so maybe we could give the Tau Empire proper some time in the sun, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe with someone that isn't Shadow Sun. Maybe Shasso Case.
Well,
maybe Shasso Case could have a story.
I guess it's to be fair, I guess it's hard to write Case into a story because his whole character is I kill people really well. But I think
but then you could just put him into a story. You could put him to a story where he's the lone wolf, and you could put him in a situation where killing stuff doesn't help.
Yeah,
like you could have him again just being like transported in his ice cube, and then all of a sudden the Imperium boards his ship and he can win and he can kill who invades. Let's say the Scar Lords are still angry and they like, we're still around, we're gonna kill you, and he kills the last of the Scar Lords, and then he's adrift in space and he has to make his way back, and he's like, I'm only good at killing things. I guess I have to be a mercenary for a while for whoever can pay me to like get the resources to get back home. And that could be a story.
And in the original Fire Warrior, that Case, who I think I still think they're supposed to be the same person, even though they aren't technically. That Case teams up with the Space Marine basically to defeat the greater enemy, and that's cool. That's a cool moment that everyone likes, right? And but they don't really do that anymore. I guess a storyline maybe where it's expanding kind of, but they're going and like relieving other Xenos planets from like say Imperium oppression, or like they're fighting orcs and they're going, it's kind of like how they saved the Kroot, but make a story about saving multiple Xenos species and bringing them into the fold of the greater good, because that's what the Tau is supposed to be, is making is forming this greater good, but it's not really what seems to happen anymore. They just fight things.
There's even the I can't remember what they're called, but there's a Leagues of Votan faction that helps the Tau, and that's where they get some of their propulsion technology from. I think, or plasma technology.
That,
I can't remember what they're called. They're called like the Dru clan or whatever it is. Like you could have a story where they could literally do a cross pollination of here's some Votan lore, here's some Tau lore. They have to work together because they're not allies, but they are like trade partners, or and you could do stuff like the Mechanicus are like, hey, we want to work with you because we're intrigued by whatever the hell that thing does. Come and help us, and we'll not turn we won't betray you. And then as soon as they get the chance, they betray them, and it's like Mechanicus Tau story. Ooh, that could be fun.
Well, I would love a Tau Eldar team up, because it makes the most sense for them to be friends with each other, because neither of them really have a stake in killing each other. The Eldar don't really have much of a reason to hate the Tau. They fought before, but it's like not really a big thing. In Tabletop in 7th edition, Tau and Eldar allying was like the meta. It was super OP and awful, but so that was the thing. I think what would also help is if they put them up against reasonable enemies. so take Damocles and stuff, I guess. Take the oh my gosh, I don't even remember which freaking expansion when the Ultramarines and the other 2 chapters fought them. It's on Dalith. I think it's a decent story. I think the Tau Empire gave the Imperium a run for their money, which is really cool. But the only reason that the Tau don't lose is because the Tyranids are now fighting against McCraig. The Tyranids are on their end McCraig, so the Space Marines just leave. So that makes the Tau looks like they won, quote unquote, from a cop out. Now everyone who's a Tau fan is like, oh, they only won because of this. Everyone who hates the Tau is like, oh, they have all this plot armor because they were able to beat these Space Marines. They only survived because Space Marines had to leave. So it's a lose-lose for everyone. Even if you actually read the books, the Tau do a really good job, all things considered, fighting against an entire the freaking Ultramarines, right? And
it doesn't help that they're directly next to the Ultramarines base of operations. Oh, you couldn't get any closer to a worse day with the Imperium because they're right next door.
But
Whereas like the White Scars, they're near Terra. I'm an Advanced Wars player. I know you shouldn't advance with your army until you have enough to stomp your enemy. And the idea of like the White Scars or whoever, even the Space Wolves, anyone in that kind of near Terra vicinity, they can't just keep sending Space Marines long distances. So it'd be more like, hey, we have to fend off this overwhelming force because eventually they're going to have to be like, oh, we've lost too many men to these long range guns and we can't keep resupplying and reinforcing because we're too far from home. We've got to pull back. And that gives you a time for them to recuperate and heal. Ultramarines, oh, we've got a micro empire on your doorstep. Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And then the other Damocles books, I think they did a bit better with Shadow Sun fighting the Raven Guard and the Catachans and the White Scars, because she does a really good job. She gives them a run for their money. Like, Corsair Khan even respects her by the end of it. The Tau are the Tau do an okay job. Like, there's still plenty of moments where random Space Marines just like beat a Ghost Killer, beat a Riptide with just their bolters, and it's like, what's the point of even putting this in the book if you're gonna just kill these things for nothing? But like the the Jade Dragons are really freaking cool. I'm glad that they're in that book and they got some spotlight. The guys who just like read the potents and the omens of the Emperor and whatnot. So I like those books because they do a good job with Shadow Sun.
I like the interaction where there's a White Scar who gets so badly injured, and Corsair is like, you'll be fine, old man. And he's like, no, please kill me. I don't want to become a dreadnought, please. And then he's like, Xenos, would you mind? And she just destroys him with a blast. He's like, we could have been friends if you weren't a filthy Xenos. Like,
she also fights.
I love White Scars.
She also fights Corsair Khan in close combat with like a knife, and like lives to tell a tale. Like the Tau characters are pretty cool. Like all these shills and memers of just, the Tau stuck at close combat. Oh, they're so weak and nearsighted. And I could be wrong, but I've read the entire codex. I've read multiple codexes and a bajillion Tau books, and never once have I read the Tau are nearsighted, and that's why they're bad at melee combat. I don't know where that came from, but I've never read it one single. I even downloaded the PDF of the codex and Control F to nearsighted. I went onto the Wikipedia. Control F nearsighted is nowhere. It's not nowhere does it say that. And I'll post it in the comments if you know the exact source. But
I know when I was doing the research for my videos, it was like, the reason they get on so well with the Kroot is because Kroot are really good fighters. They have really dense muscle fibers, and they can just arm wrestle guardsmen for days and not care. And it's not that the Tau are weak necessarily physically. It's just they're a bit smaller stature than like a Space Marine. So you're not gonna win a fist fight with him.
You're putting these guys up against freaking super gene enhanced super soldiers. Of course they're gonna get killed. But then you put situations like in the Blades of Damocles book, there's like rabble of guardsmen who are all about to die, just decide we're gonna charge the gun line, and then they do, and then they just win because the Tau didn't expect close combat. Like that's dumb. I don't know. The average this is like the myth that I'm trying to dispel, is that the average fire warrior the average fire warrior could beat you up and kill you with no struggle whatsoever. The average human being gets soloed by a fire warrior. The average guardsman, not as much. But the reason that the Tau avoid close combat is because they are actually taught to survive in warfare scenarios. and they have their technology. They have such superior technology that they don't see the merit in
Yeah.
close combat.
I
Because why be so wasteful? Let the mercenaries do that bloody
Yeah.
primitive work, right?
Well,
So,
the thing is, it's
yeah.
like if you're a guardsman, you have like a factory issue las gun, you have your rations, and then you look at the tower and they've got like air conditioned like armor suiting, and they're like, oh, I got this optimally calibrated. Like even like the rich and noble houses of the Imperial Guard, the problem they have is like it doesn't matter how mastercrafted your weapon is, that pulse rifle has better range and it's just a better weapon than a las gun.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's like that whole idea of like, why would I go up and stab you when I can shoot you from a mile away and not have to break a sweat?
And like the comparison I've made before is on one side, you have this guy who's taught that his life is worth only what he can give to the Emperor. He is meant to die in combat for the Emperor of mankind, for the Imperium. It doesn't matter. Like his life is a tool to be used in warfare. Half of these guys are zealots, and they all they want to do is serve the Emperor and die for the Emperor, right? So they will charge in without fear and fight in close combat. And then you on the other side you have this highly sophisticated, highly advanced society with very nice technology. The troopers are trained to use their technology to the best effect, and also to use hit and run modern military tactics that keep them out of range and keep them safe. So naturally, when you have the guy who's taught his life is worth only what he can give to the Emperor, and then the other one who's taught that his life is important and that he needs to survive, obviously one of them is probably going to be better at fighting in close combat because the other guy's kind of crazy compared to the other one.
And
right?
and the incentives are better. Like I understand the Imperium. It's like, hey, you get to die and live in the afterlife
like the
by the side of the
Crusades,
Emperor. That's
basically.
pretty cool.
You get if you die, then you go to heaven, right? Like,
yeah. But the thing about the Tau, I remember when I was doing my Tau videos, it's like, hey, if you do like a really good job in the Tau Firecast, they have a Sept World, which is just a retirement home for veterans, and it's really nice. And it's like, and it's never under siege. It's nice and protected. It's really nice standard of living. It's like, oh, if you retire like Yarrick retired from the guard, what did he do? He had to go to a Schola Progenium to teach how to be a commissar or a soldier. And then he was like, I'm coming out of retirement. That bloody orc's back again. You know.
Like they treat their Firecast pretty good. Obviously, like they still have plenty of moments where they have their sacrificial units because sometimes that's just what you have to do, right? But it's like the commanders who do that don't do it like
frivolously,
easily. And to be fair, like that being said, a lot of Imperial Guard commanders aren't like these evil, I'm going to waste all my troops' lives. Like that's definitely a myth as well. But still, your average Imperial Guard commander and guardsmen are both going to be more willing to die and more willing to send people to die than your average Firecast warrior.
And there's also the added layer of threat with the because they have psychic potential. It's like, if I don't hold the line, it's not that we're just going to die. Those things are going to eat our souls and my children's souls, and it's going to spread, and it's going to be a real problem. Whereas the Tau, it's more like, I guess I'll die. Oh, well, I had a good life, and I'm not going to live in forever hell. That's a nice thing. So there is that.
There's, I don't know, there's a lot of layers to it, but I like the average fire warrior is a very strong, very well trained guy. I mean, for Pete's sake, in the Farsight novels, you see him fighting in like an orc war boss with a katana, and he kills him. Like it's a simulated scenario, but it still happens.
And that's a gripe I have with the Tau books as well. There's so many books where we're fighting the orcs. So there's no nuance. Like orcs are fun to fight, and orcs are fun. But if you're going to do a story, they're not a good opponent because there's no character development. There's no stakes other than orc's going to kill you. Like, oh, that's fun. But then it's like if you were fight, like I enjoyed the dynamics of the the Fire Warrior game because again, there's that whole thing where the Fire Warrior, they make an alliance with the Ultramarines. Peter Serafinowicz, he voices the Ultramarine captain, who's the guy who's like, he's Pate from Dark Souls 2. That guy, he's the Ultramarine captain. Okay. Brian Blessed is like an admiral, and he becomes possessed.
I haven't heard the audiobook. I only read the book. I might have to.
And he's like, "Kill me, kill me!" And he turns and you're like, "Brian, you're shouting your heart out. Bless you." But again, I liked in that story because I never played the game, but I watched the cutscenes for like video stuff, and it was like, oh, they make a tenuous alliance.
Mhm.
The Ultramarines are honorable, so they let them go at the end. They
Mhm.
help them blow up the threat. And then the Tau are like, well, we survived today. And then Tau Case has PTSD for the rest of his life.
Yep.
But, stuff happened. And because
Yeah.
it was with a quote, nuanced adversary with both Chaos and the Imperium,
Mhm.
there was some backstabbing, political intrigue. The Raptors are in it for a bit. There was a nice overlap of like, oh, I see it from the Tau perspective, but now I see it from the Imperial perspective. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, the Ultramarines and the Admiral are scheming behind the scenes. Oh, whereas Orcs is like, oh, I'm gonna crump you. It's like, could we please have
like
an enemy that has a bit more nuance, please?
The Orcs are okay as a like Codex opponent, like the Arku-Nashar War for Farsight. You just read about it in the Codex, right? And then like it's cool, like it's a cool war that he fought. He understood he transcribed the Orc language, basically. He wrote the Book of the Beast or whatever.
Beast,
which is really cool. Which is, even though it's like Vashti-Odds it's in between spheres, so they don't like it. So like that stuff is cool, but you don't need an entire book about those scenarios. I feel like just keeping it in the Codex or like a novella is completely fine. And also, speaking of Case, it's an awesome book, but it is a little silly. I can admit that. One lone fire warrior is soloing like the entire Imperial Guard army, but they could have expanded on that and said this is why he was so strong. They could have said, like, some guy in my comments was saying he was actually part of this secret super soldier program, and like I've never heard of that in my entire life. And I said source, and he said I don't have a source. And so it's like, sure, but if they did something like that, that would have been cool, and it would have made a bit more sense.
I thought that was Shasso Case, because wasn't he like, oh, he was a promising commander, and like that's why he was inducted by what's his name, the mentor, Pure Tide, and he was like, you're a good. That I think, again, it's that confusion with the names thing.
Yeah, but they could have taken Chazelle Case, who has just somehow is the guy. He is him. Like, he's the 1 in 1 trillion genetic phenoms that is the perfect warrior. And Pure Tide could have said, I want that guy, and I'm gonna train him and make him like this precise weapon. And I still think that's what GW meant to do. They just never actually made things line up, because Fire Warrior is kind of like the original Tau lore, to my understanding. And since it was the original, everything else that happened around that is completely different in dates and stuff, because it's new. All the new lore is a lot different. So now there's the inconsistency that Shasso Case like wasn't even done basic training or something when Chazelle Case was fighting, or it's the other way around. I don't remember. But I think that they were supposed to be the same guy, but GW just fumbled it so bad that they are pretty distinctively two different people as the timelines go nowadays. But Shazo Case has PTSD. He is crazy. He has been to the brink of insanity, but they don't talk. They say that, but then they don't elaborate on any of his history whatsoever. So I'm
sure in the Shadow Sun book, it's just like, oh, he's brooding and moody.
Yeah, that's like, it. And then like in the War of Secrets, which I read specifically for Case, he's really cool in the 10 pages that he's in, and then he's just gone. He solos like the entire Fortress Monastery of the Angels of Absolution. So that's I do like that.
Well, as much as people have a go at Malum Kaido from Bolt Gun for killing a Lord of Change, Fire Warrior did it first, holding a bolter. He picks up a bolter and a bunch of other guns, and he's like, I'm just going to carry all these at once, and bolter the demon. And I like that the idea that Pure Tide was like, Shovar, he's quite tactically brilliant. Oh, Shadow Sun's cunning. And Case is a genetic freak. Yeah. I'll have him, please.
That's what they should do. And if they came out with a Case book that smoothed over all the timelines and stuff, and said that Chazelle Case is now the evolved and new Shazo Case, that would be nice. That would make kind of salvage his character. I think it would really help, because then he would have a lot more backstory and an inciting incident, a very important inciting incident of his character being, and how he kind of went to the brink of insanity and came back from it after vigorous mental training and whatnot. But instead, he's basically never talked about again. If you go off the timeline, right? I think there's in my heart he's the same guy. I think he's supposed to be the same guy. They just made it so that he's not because they can't do timelines correctly.
And again, the trouble is that the only characters we have now are Shadow Sun and Farsight.
Yep.
Anvar's dead.
Yep. That's the other thing is the Tau are the only faction to have their like main head guy just killed. Like, no wonder people
imagine if the Emperor just died one day. Like, what?
Yeah.
Huh? What?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No freaking wonder people like make fun of them. Like, no other faction, even the Eldar, like, well, the Eldar get pretty bad treatment. But
Khorne's missing. And all the world eaters are like, huh? Khorne? What? He's off his chair.
They don't go
He's
kill
never off his
Primarchs.
chair.
Yep, they're not going to go kill Marneus Calgar.
Mm.
But they can only advance the lore for the Tau and nobody else apparently. They can blow up Cadia, I guess, but you know they're not going to kill any major characters though.
Well, new Cadia stands, so it's fine.
Yeah. So nothing ever happens. Consult the graph. Nothing ever happens.
Well, there's some weird books. Where like there's the book Firecast by Peter Fehervari.
I need to read that one. It does look.
Well, here's the thing. I hate the cover because it bisects the cover with like a sideways title, so you can't see the artwork, and the artwork is off kilter, and it's really bad. And the most like prominent character is not a Tau; it's an Imperial. It's a commissar.
He's the guy on the cover, I imagine, like looking around the corner.
Yeah, looking around the corner. And I love that the highest rating Goodreads review is like, before you start reading this book, you should know it won't be easy. It's all like and the thing is that like if you want the where's the bit? It's if you want a book about brave defenders of humanity defending horrific enemies, this book is not for you. If you look for a book about Tau Empire and its noble warriors, this is not for you. And the review is basically like, this is a weird book, but it's worth a read because it's crazy.
Interesting.
And I'm like so intrigued. And it's got a 4.2, 618 ratings. People seem to like it. I've never heard anyone talk about it.
It's one of the older ones, and I love older 40K books a lot.
2013.
Yeah. I guess this one's not super old, but it's still in kind of like in my opinion, the good times of Warhammer. War of Secrets only has a 3.5. That friggin' should be lower, honestly. But like this is the other thing. Whenever they're fighting Space Marines, they just get cucked. Like, stealth suits are supposed to be the pinnacle of stealth technology, right? They're basically invisible. But when these guys are fighting Lieutenant Farron and his Primaris Marines, they just all die. They just it doesn't matter that they're invisible. The Space Marines should take off their helmets and then kill them all. And it's like, what is the point of all this tech?
To be fair to the Space Marines, they get butchered in the Fire Warrior game until I think one of the old. I think he's butchering the Raptors, who are like the least Space Marine. You wouldn't expect them to be the ones.
The Fire Warrior game doesn't really count though. The book does because it's a book. But the Fire Warrior, if you're playing as a protagonist in a video game, like you're always going to be destroying the other guys, right?
But I do like how in a cutscene though, I think the Ultramarines turn up and they just kind of bop in the back of the head and they capture him. They're like, "Hey, stop shooting us. We've made an agreement with your boss. Well, come onto the battle barge."
I do like the moments in the book where the Tower, like perspective of fighting the Space Marines, and it's like absolutely terrifying. I feel like it doesn't really turn up a lot anymore, but I don't know. I want justice for Kroot as well. I need justice for Kroot because they get wrecked so hard in the Damocles book when they ambush the White Scars, and the White Scars take like 0 casualties. Classic Space Marine. In War of Secrets, to be fair, a Kroot Shaper absolutely bodies like Farron. Like it's like a 5-second fight. He just like takes him down and destroys him. But then the Space Marine plot armor kicks in, and the Kroot Shaper just kind of like stops fighting and like looks the other way, and then Farron's and Belisarian Furnace kicks in and he kills the Kroot Shaper. Because we can't have a Kroot killing Lieutenant Farron. No, we can't, even though he beats him in 5 seconds of fighting, but that's the closest I've gotten to my Kroot vindication. Kroot Shaper.
I'd agree with you. I'd agree with you if it wasn't the White Scars involved. I'm like, no, I can't. I'm not allowed. I am bound by law not to.
It's fine that like a Space Marine, of course, can 1v1 a Kroot easy peasy. But when it's like 30 Kroot fighting a group of 5 Space Marines, like, come on, give me 1 casualty at least, please. But I don't know. Kroot Shapers are goated. They beat Space Marines.
Need to recreate the scene of Noble Six in Halo Reach, where he's just
Yeah.
being swarmed by Covenant.
Mhm.
So yeah, realistically, I think the way to fix the lore in an overall sense is we just need like some stories that they don't have to be high stakes.
Mhm.
I think we just like you were saying, have an alliance with the Eldar, or it was like, hey, have Darkstrider have a lost in a like, oh, a stranger in a foreign land. Oh, I don't know anything. I don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm gonna have to test my abilities, or oh, I'm a mercenary for hire. Like something where it's a small story that could have some nice like. Because are there any like factions that the Tau haven't interacted with yet? Like they've obviously fought Tyranids, they've obviously fought a lot of Orcs, Imperium. They've interacted with the Eldar, I assume.
Yeah. Well, they have. I think it's just Codex lore. I don't think there's any novel, but I could be wrong. I do know that there's a very specific artwork of Craft World Iandin fighting Tau that I know of. I don't know if they've really had a good fight against the sisters. That could be wrong, though, to be fair, because sometimes they just
Well,
randomly books.
Book of Martyrs, one of them kills Nefarian.
Oh yeah, I remember.
They capture her, and they're all like, "Hey, we want to like harness the power of faith for our own abilities." And then like, oh, we're not going to take her armor off because we want to be cordial and respectful. And then she just at one point grabs the ethereal and just bashes his head into the floor before and all the characters in that book die because it's the Book of Martyrs. All three of them that you have the POVs for, they die. But it's like, I took out an ethereal before I went for the Emperor.
Yeah, good job.
And it's Alan Go, I think, who's an established character. It's not a rando ethereal, it's a real one. That's one less.
They're to my understanding, the only interactions they've had with the Drukhari are where they traded them Tau people to help against the Tyranids, and then they saw the Tau as grotesque fighting with the Drukhari, and they got pretty mad about it. I don't know. A book about a Tau Gene Stealer cult would be nice, because I know that there is a Tau Gene Stealer cult, but I mean that's kind of just like random. That
a good stealer cult, if you will.
Let me look at the factions here,
because I'm just thinking that like the thing about most of the Imperium, they don't know the Tau exist. They're so far away. You could have so many story ideas or opportunities, I should say, where a Tau is again far from the Tau Empire, and the Imperium would be like, I don't know what the hell this thing is, but it's got a lot of shiny stuff. Maybe it's not a heretic. I don't know. I've never seen a blue thing before with a railgun.
I think a knight, an Imperial knight teaming up with like a Riptide or something could be a neat little buddy story.
Ooh, that's a fun one.
Yeah. I think one of the major things that they need to change, that they're not going to, it was a big mistake, is the ethereals. Obviously, I think they've made so many innuendos and just small little parts in Tau lore that show that their empire is like behind the scenes is quite evil. Like, they have the labor camps, they sterilize people, all that stuff.
Yeah.
They could have had like one of those things, so that there's one little aspect of bad. Like if they turn their Guevesa criminals into like cannon fodder, that's like that's bad, but it like at least it makes some sense. They don't want these alien criminals in their society. That's something. But the ethereals were so mysterious and aloof before, and now they've just made them out to be so like just evil. And they could have done a similar thing where they could have still at least had good intentions, and they could have been like the ends justify the means kind of thing, and that they don't enjoy doing this. But when you read like the Farsight books, they're just bad. Like they're just evil. It's like it comes across that they just like are power hungry, and they don't want any secrets to get out because they want to keep their power, not for the sake of the Empire, but for their sake of having power over the Empire, where they could have had it for the sake of the Empire instead. So there's still some aspect of like of bad there, but at least they're trying to do it because they love the Empire, because they care about the people.
It's not like the Imperium where it's like we want to protect the citizens from chaos because it's gonna be horrible. So we have to be extreme. It's more the Tau like, I'm gonna do some dirty shit. It's like ethereals. Why are you doing this?
And
you know what I think would
on-she like characters as well. Sorry. Having more on-she type characters would be nice, where the ethereals actually end up being good. But
isn't on-she a little bit jaded with how things are going at the
Yeah,
moment.
well, he helps the Farsight enclaves. And
Well, this is the thing. I have an idea. Can I pitch you an idea that I've just come up
Mhm.
with in my brain box? Right, picture this. Aunshi gets a book series, right?
Mhm.
And it's in the style of Star Trek The Next Generation. So he's like, I want to do the greater good, but I'm jaded with the ethereal cast, but I still have power. I'm going to take a prototype ship with some of my best people, and we're going to go out there and explore. I'm going to try and make some alliances. Maybe they ally with that Night House, and the Night House are like, one book is we're being besieged by Tyranids or something. And then the Night House is on its last legs, and then Alan Sheik comes in, and they help fend them off, and they're like, "We are honor bound to help you because you helped us." And they're like, "We like honor too. Awesome. We'll outfit your Night House with some of our technology, and now you'll be we'll have an alliance." And oh, that's good. And then they go back into the stars, and they try to like spread the greater good on a micro rather than a macro level. That could be a fun idea.
Yeah.
Jean-Luc
I would
Anchy,
like that.
you know?
Or they could be Anchy could like I don't know how you would really do it well, but if Anchy led like a peaceful revolt against the ethereals, because that's very on brand for an ethereal. They're very in tune with themselves and they're very peaceful and stuff, right? If he kind of peacefully made his way up the ladder and then stayed and then had like a coup basically, just without the killing part. He staged this coup for or like maybe even like I don't know, like Monsters Inc. freaking catching Dr. Wire News saying all the bad things. Like he catches the head ethereal saying some evil stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what are you gonna do? And
isn't Anvar like because he's dead, they still project like
hologram.
a fake they make like a hologram, and he needs to be like, hey, we've been living a lie. He's been dead for years. I'm the only named ethereal character left. I'll be in charge now, and we're going to do things differently. And that would give them so much license to be like, I'm going to do stories.
They took him
It's
out
like,
of the game.
we can completely erase the creepy ethereal like all that stuff. You could reset them and be like, Alan Shee's in charge. He gets in the front lines. He's got a cool like spear thing, like a Guandal sort of thing, and then he can be the main leader of the Tau. And there'd still be differences between Farsight and the Empire, but they could be on like agreeable terms. And maybe we could stop doing the bloody spheres of expansion because it's getting boring.
Another thing I guess could be Onshi and Farsight could team up and do like they could like march together with their armies to the capital and like basically go to the head guys and be like, we're taking over now. We're not going to kill anyone, but all of our guns are pointed at you, so you should probably not make us kill you, right? But then that could also put Farsight back into the fray of the Tau Empire. Because I don't really know if I do love Farsight. I like the Farsight enclaves. I don't really know if they were necessary though. Like, do we need a separate faction of the Tau who already don't have enough lore as a whole faction?
Yeah, stretching them a bit thin.
Yeah. So I don't know. Also, as the models go, like it does make sense that they're escalating more and more every edition, basically, because that's kind of the Tau's thing. So they're making better and better technology very quickly. But they didn't have to get rid of the exact aesthetic to make that work. And they also, more tech doesn't necessarily mean bigger battle suits as well. It could be different weapons. It could be different equipment. It could be different tanks and vehicles. It could be different drones. Like it could be a lot more than just making this battle suit's bigger and so therefore it's better.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue to be honest. So talking about the miniature range, so I did a look at what you can buy on Warhammer website. So at the moment, there's actually quite a pretty big variety. So you can get the new Farsight model, new Darkstrider, new Shadow Sun, and Retaliation Carder, a Commander, Ethereal, Carder Fireblade, Fire Warrior Strike Team, Pathfinders, Breacher teams. You can get Battlesuit teams, Stealth Team, Ghost Keels, Riptide Broadside, Storm Surge, Hammerhead, Devilfish, Tactical Drones, Tide Wall Drone Port. You can get Trail Shaper. You can get Shark Bomber, Skyray Gunship, all sorts of stuff. And there's like a ton. And there's not all the Kroot. There's some new Kroot because they obviously like refreshed the series. So like the old what's it called? The big Krootox. That's now updated, and some of them have like new updated
Greater
models.
Narlock. We need a Greater Narlock, my beloved.
Yes,
that would be so amazing.
But there's like a lot missing. So like the Supremacy armor's gone, the Manta's gone, Barracuda's gone.
$2,000.
To be fair. But then there's also things like like Tao Shang, the tank guy, he's gone. You can't get Armbar because he's dead. You can't get
she's dead. Or no,
retro
he's dead in
broadsides. Yeah, he's dead now.
Not dead in the lore, at least, but
Well, there's a lot missing, but and the main thing people I think will want to know if they're new to Warhammer is like, okay, what's the cost of entry? And the cost for a combat patrol is £100, about 150 Canadian dollars.
Expensive army, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I remember watching Auspex Tactics video of the like Christmas boxes that are coming out. The Dark Angels one is like 1,000 points. So is the Imperial Knights one. The Tau one is like 500 points
for the same cost.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, because looking at it, it's like what have you got in this patrol? So you've got what does it say? You've got like a crisis battle suit. I think that is
the commander.
You got the commander. You've got some little dudes. You've got a gunship. You got some drones. And so you got what? 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, like 20 small guys, 2 drones, a big suit, and a gunship.
I mean, to be
fair, varied box, but
to be fair, all the combat patrols suck now.
Yeah.
This retaliation cadre. I need to go on the Canadian website to see real prices, the depressing prices. Let's see here. Retaliation cadre is 290 Canadian dollars for 500 points. So that's
that's a quarter crazy conversion rate.
That's a quarter of your army for $300. The combat patrol is $200 for 1 squad of fire warriors, a devilfish, and a commander. Like, why even freaking bother? Like, I just don't. I don't know. I don't get it.
Well, for context, for people who aren't like super into buying the miniatures, what if I was to get like an Imperial Knight and the equivalent Tau battlesuit? Are they a similar price, you reckon, or is it more like the Tau stuff is more expensive because it's a bit more?
A Riptide is $143, and I think that's cheaper than a Knight.
Okay, but so it's a bit cheaper than like for the bulky units.
Yeah, like let me see. An Imperial Knights, it's $220. So an Imperial Knight's about 60 Canadian more. But an Imperial Knight is like 500 points at least, I think. And they are larger. But I mean, you know what? As far as things go, the Riptide being 143, could be worse. Even though that plastic costs them in the cents. But, whatever. Yeah. This is kind of off topic, but I know I was kind of telling you guys how in Japan I noticed all the Gundams were like $20 and they had more materials and a lot of some of them more detailed than 40K models. And I just saw Luis like this. I didn't watch your video, but I saw the thumbnail with holding the Gundam model and be like, this changed my mind about Warhammer. It's like $20.
That's the thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like
Louise and Peachy and Tom, who does the sculpts for her model range, they all got invited by Gundam UK to go to Comic-Con the other week, and I didn't get invited, but I went to Comic-Con. I had a look, and I was like, oh wow! And they were talking about like, oh, it's so easy. You can get these like teeny tiny miniatures. They're about the same size as Warhammer models, and they snap together, and they're so precise. Like there's no mold lines, there's no stuff, and they're like, when they do their podcast jugs, they were like, hey, Games Workshop, you need to up your game, because that they didn't say that, but that was what they were inferring, because it's like the Gundam people are insane with build quality and the cost is cheaper.
Well, I know. At this point, you're paying for the brand. It's like buying clothes. Like if you buy expensive clothes that are just the same quality as a random T-shirt at the store, you're just paying for the freaking logo on the shirt, right? It feels the same way with Warhammer, unfortunately. And I know people say, oh, but like shipping and supply lines are different now, but it's like these guys are still profiting in the millions of dollars. They are not struggling whatsoever.
Yeah. So more than ever, I want to say they're making more money than they've ever made.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And like looking at the Tau models, I want to reiterate again that I like the Tau models. I just think they could be a bit toned down to what they used to be. I do like the Tau models.
I think one of the other problems with Tau models is because like the Space Marines, as a comparison, have so many chapter combinations and heraldry. Tau have ochre, like brown, white, or red, and that's all you can paint them.
It would have been kind of cool if they had like specific units. I guess not realistic for me to say that. I feel like, well, maybe it is because there's 20 freaking Space Marine legions, and they all have their own units instead of being on 40k, but 30k included. They all have special things. So maybe if they had like a specific unit from each sept, even just one, it could even just be like some special looking stealth suits or like a unit of fire warriors.
The Necrons, all their dynasties have different color schemes. Space Marines have a ton of color schemes. Eldar have a bunch of colors. Like Tau, it's just weird that I know their whole thing is like, we're united in purpose, blah, blah. It's like, you could keep the white and red for the ethereal guard, so to speak. You have Farsight as red, and then you could just have like ochre as maybe the generic color scheme, and then you could like go, oh, sept whatever, sept Dalith, it's silver and blue. Cool. I mean, you'd have some variety.
Yeah, and they do have the separate sept color schemes. You just don't really see them ever.
Yeah,
because they do have a few cool ones, but yeah,
especially for ways to fix things in a free manner. Just be like, hey, we're doing one, because they did one recently on Warhammer Community, and it's all the Solar Auxilia color schemes, because every legion, because it's Horus Heresy, has a distinct guard for each planet. So it's like the Calibanite Jaegers, I think it's called, and then there's like the ones from Colchis and blah blah, and they all are like, oh, I can see the similarity to the Legion, and they have similar color schemes, and I'm like, oh, they did a community post. They did like 4. It's like, here's 5 of these, 5 of these, 5 of these, and here's some bonus ones which are like not to do with Space Marine homeworlds, but they are important places. Like, here's some from Terra, blah blah. Do that with a Tau in a community post. Figure out some color schemes, and you could, for free, practically for like, I say for free, you'll have to like pay one of your employees to do a focus, like get some of the artists to go like, all right, where's your homebrews? Maybe we can make an official each sept. Put the community post out there, and then all the Tau players are like, all right, can't wait to paint my Tau like this. And I feel like a lot of people have the hang up of, I don't want to paint something. It may sound silly, but I think some people are like, I want to make sure it's accurate so I don't get people laughing at my homebrew. And so if you had official ones they could do, you could get out of the idea of like, oh, they have to look exactly like this to be, quote, real minis.
Like, I have the old codex right here. There's a section with all the different, like, I mean, you can just like look at this, like there's 4 different color schemes on just that page alone. And then there's a specific section somewhere with all the different septs. Like, here's like, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different sept color schemes on this page, and they also include the colors of how to paint them. But this is the 4th edition codex. They did it, but now Warhammer's not what it used to be. So,
so they need to bring it back. They don't even have to do any much work. They could just bring it back. Paint them in that style and be like, we did a community post. Remember this? Well, you can do it. Go on.
I have the newer Tau codex like lying around somewhere. I don't know where, and I don't think that's included to the same degree in the newer one. I think it's still there, at least a little bit, but yeah. Another thing for the tabletop, if they just added like two Xenos units, 2 different types of aliens, like one could even just be like a character unit, and then the other could be, I don't know, something random, like have some like worm people who can deep strike and tunnel through the ground, and they're kind of deep strike, like assault, ambush troop types, right, with short ranged guns, or they could have a character model or a specific unit that has psychic powers. So then you can have this one psychic alien in your Tau army, because they have psychers in the Greater Good auxiliaries. They are there. Just have this weird like amoeba floating jellyfish thing that can cast psychic powers, and it doesn't have to be big. It could be like the Imperial psychers for the Imperial Guard, but it'd still be unique and be interesting.
Yeah, they again, I can't remember any of them, because I did do a video on like the different. I did the Tau Emperor, and I talked about all the different like species that help them. They do exist. A lot of them have a bunch of them have lore. A bunch of them have images that you can use as references. And the other thing is, they've got that Votan faction. You get those guys, put them in a bespoke box that you can use with your Tau army. You could then use them in your Votan army as well if you want. Just paint them differently, and then you've killed 2 birds with one stone.
And it would help if they brought ally rules back. Even if you like for the Tau alone, they said like from these following factions, you can have one like generic character unit and one troop choice to act as an ally during your game. I think that'd be neat. Just like you could have a Space Marine captain and a squad of Space Marines. You could have like an Imperial Guard general or like command squad and some and like a tank. I don't know. Kind of like how they did Brood Brothers for Gene Stealer cults, where like a certain amount of points you can have be Brood Brothers Imperial Guard units. I guess it's different now, but that's how it was. I don't know. That's just one thing though. That'd be interesting.
Well, I think the things that are holding back, it's not exactly model variety. It's just I think like you were saying, we could get some of those helper species, add some options for paint schemes, maybe add some bespoke characters that we're not going to get Anvar, I think, because
well, they need a new ethereal. They need a new ethereal for the tabletop, a new ethereal character, because they don't have Anshi or Anvar, so it's like.
Well, again, the one I mentioned before when I was doing my videos, I'm like, there's Anshi, there's Anvar, and there's Aundo, and then Aundo gets bludgeoned to death in the Book of Martyrs, and I'm like, that's your last one you have.
I think
there's only one left.
Yeah, I think Aun Wei is the new head guy.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Aun Wei, yeah.
Poor Anva, Rip King. Literally evil because they butchered his character, but whatever.
He got assassinated. At least the Assassinorum had some lore. That was nice for once.
Yeah.
We did an assassin. Cool. It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while since we've assassinated anyone important.
Yeah.
When was the last one? Kurz.
Yeah. Darkstrider fights in Vindicare and Farsight fights in Eversoul, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he tracks the snipers. What are they called?
The Vindicare.
Vindicare.
I think is what you say.
Yeah, so he like tracks him over the rooftops and he's escaping and he keeps coming back. He's like, oh, this guy, can't get rid of this guy. He's like, oh, that's cool. Darkstrider had some lore. Any more? No. He killed an unknown assassin, a faceless assassin.
If they made like a Cabal type thing, like in the Horus Heresy, the Cabal exists. That was kind of, it feels like that was like the proto Tau. If they made it similar to that, that would be interesting.
Well, I listened to it's fairly old. It's like a year old. I think it was a year or so. With Dan Abnett being asked questions, he was asked on one of the bits like, "Are the Cabal still alive?" And he said, "I want them to be." And he should know. He wrote them. Say, but his whole thing was he was like, even if they're not specifically alive, Warhammer has this thing of repeating. It's like poetry; they rhyme. It's like a faction like the Cabal will learn about what the Cabal did. They will become the new Cabal because history repeats itself, and that would be cool. But we can live in hope. Anyway, we might get someone who writes some Tau lore. We never.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating that they somehow went the same route with Chaos as the Emperor did, where the Ethereals find out that Chaos exists, and then they say, "We're not going to tell anybody, and we're going to kill everybody who knows about it." And it's like, what the heck? Like this, it's just so unoriginal. Like you already did this. And
I feel like it would have been better if they told some people and then it proved absolutely catastrophic. And then they had to go, oh, actually, no. Yeah. Now we have a reason not to.
Like the original lore is that
we tried to do the right thing and we sucked at it. Yeah. Oh,
the original lore is that the Tau have like basically no connection to the warp. So they should, in theory, be quite resistant to chaos. So telling them about chaos wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah,
because they wouldn't fall to chaos generally.
As long as the Chaos Space Marines bolter isn't in your mouth, you should be okay. It's the guns you got to worry about, not the wibbly squibblies coming to get you in the bedrooms. Like, no. Nope,
again, it's another scenario of like now whenever they fight chaos, like, oh, what's happening? What are these things? I've never heard of this before. Now we lose because we weren't told about this, and
it would give them an edge if they were like, hey, we know exactly what we're doing with chaos. We're the only faction.
It'd be pretty
cool.
Can
not just counter, but we're like the expert, chaos counter.
Well,
and then the Necrons are like, wait, that's our thing. Like, shut up, you.
It'd be pretty neat if they had like a anti-psyker, anti-demon, some kind of anti-psyker, anti-demon technology. Like maybe they discover Blackstone and then they kind of like reverse engineer it, and because that's a very Tau thing to do. Right?
Are they affected by blanks very badly?
I mean, there's as much as like any regular human is.
I suppose because
Just
again, maybe you
scared.
could have like an interesting, like, oh, there's a Sisters of Silence because I want some Sisters of Silence for Sisters of Silence meet the Tau. Well, that's weird, and they're like, there's something off about these ladies.
Because it is the
They
Colexis
just
that
signed to
kills.
shut up you.
It is the Colexis that kills Anvar.
Yeah, and there's like after them all going,
Yeah.
But that's his thing. His whole thing is he's a freaky guy who's the worst kind of blank to ever meet. Whereas a sister, they probably just be like, I've got like an itch. It's weird. I don't like it.
Now see
Something wrong here.
If they did the Tau correctly, you'd have your codex and you would have this entire section of random auxiliary units you could take, like how you could take a Jakiro freaking monkey man with the Grey Knights back in the day, where they would have like you can have this random blank character to be your anti-psyker. You can have this jellyfish psyker unit to be a psyker. You can have these worm people, the deep strike and assault people, and help out the Kroot in your army, because the Kroot have always just been cannon fodder units on the tabletop, which really sucks.
You gave me the mental image of Caldor Drago briefly getting out of the warp, and he's there with the Grey Knights, and they're like, Supreme Grandmaster, what's that? And he's just like got a little Jakiro on his shoulder, and just goes, monkey. I got the monkey, and then he disappears. And like, what the hell was that about?
Imagine they had monkeys in the Tau Empire, like. Yeah,
it makes sense.
There's so many things that they could do, but it's not the direction that Warhammer's going. I don't like it. Now adding random aliens to the Tau would mess with their current aesthetic and seem off-brand, and just wouldn't. It would be out of place now in current Warhammer.
I understand. Like, again, talking about that Dan Abnett Q&A that I mentioned before, he mentioned about how the thing about Warhammer is you have to have every faction in perpetual war, which means you can't have lasting alliances. And I'm like, fair enough, but you can have brief ones, and you can have alliances of like what would it be, the term I'm looking for, like selfish alliances, where it's I want the thing, like they did in Fire Warrior. Ultramarines are we want this Chaos God, you're useful, we're friends. As soon as you get out of like firing range, we are not friends, and we will shoot you if you come back. Like, that's fine. That's okay. And it's not going to disrupt the ecosystem of Warhammer 40k. But it's just a shame that it seems now these days they're a bit piss scared to be like, we can't have alliances of convenience anymore.
I know. But at the same time, like, you obviously can't have entire factions being friends, but you can have sub factions. Like, you could have, I don't know, Craft World Simhan, or any of the Craft Worlds, Alitalk even. You could say that they are explicitly allied with the Tau, and they don't fight the Tau. But every other Craft World fights the Tau. And I mean, I guess it kind of, like, in the very weird situation where you're having someone with a Alitalk army fighting someone with Tau on the tabletop, like, sure, I guess it kind of messes with that immersion. But you could all, at the same time, you could say Alitalk is specifically allied with one specific sept, and they are generally friends, but there's still like skirmishes that can happen. Like, allies, no allies are perfect, right? And
you don't want the Tau teaming up with the Black Legion. That would be weird. But it's like, okay, like you could have like a prescribed, you can ally with this and this and this.
Now that Imperial agents exist, I think what Imperial agents are is what Tau should be, with random Xenos units, like how the Imperial agents work. So you have the main faction of the Tau, but then you have all of these other things that are also their own little factions. But it's just make the Imperial Agents Codex into a Tau Codex, and you're freaking you're golden.
Servants of the greater good, not the Tau Empire.
Exactly. That would be great. Even if that was like a supplement book, which they don't really do that much anymore, I understand, but that would be a nice one.
Well, I mean, I think that was a pretty good chat about the Tau.
I think so too.
Covered a lot of stuff about their lore and their miniatures and the troubles they are having currently. With that in mind, closing out the episode, do you have any closing thoughts on the state of the Tau as a faction and your hopes for them in the future?
I don't know. If I'm being honest, it feels a little bit bleak to me with all this fourth sphere expansion stuff and the Tau God. Not great if they just stop talking about the Tau God forever. They just kind of they just pretend the fourth sphere stuff doesn't exist, and they kind of go back on track to what the Tau normally were. Then maybe that would maybe, but they've already covered. They've made all these Farsight books, so I don't see them expanding on his lore again anytime soon. They made these Shadow Sun books, so I don't see them expanding on her lore again anytime soon. Logically, Case is the only one left, but they have avoided him like the plague, and given him 10 pages in the last decade of Warhammer lore. So I really don't know what they're going to do next, and I have a feeling that they might just do nothing for quite a while, because they're going to say, oh, you guys have all these Farsight books and Shadow Sun books. You don't need any more Tau lore for another 5 years. And we'll see with the Elemental Council book coming out, I guess. But I'm a little bit worried that they're going to get put on the back burner and just kind of act as a thing that exists maybe as an enemy in certain books and like a side faction in others.
The Votan effect, as I'm coining it.
Yeah.
We made this thing. What thing?
Yeah.
We didn't make anything. Shut up.
Also, their 10th edition codex has already been released, right?
Yeah.
So there's no reason for them to even make more, because they're not the next codex releases. I mean, that gives us hope for some Eldar books. I'm like begging and praying and pleading that we get a Fugan book where Fugan just like solos, because Fugan's a baller and just fights. He beats up demon princes for like a hobby. So I hope that we get some justification for some Phoenix Lords.
It's particularly weird with the Eldar as what I would describe as the first sphere of Warhammer influence. You got like Space Marine, Necrons. I know Necrons were later released, but like Eldar Space Marines, they're quite integral to the plot, and it's like they are so badly treated.
I know.
I'm sure Colin will have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I'm almost sad that I don't get to do the Fixing Eldar video after what I just currently read, but yeah, I just read. So any viewers who want to get into Eldar, just read their Codex lore and nothing else. The just vacuum of Codex lore, and they're like the coolest faction ever. Just don't read any books.
At least the Tau have like tolerable books that you can read. Like,
I don't hate the Tau books.
Stuff is fine.
Yeah, I enjoy most of the Tau books that I've read. War Secrets is just a Space Marine book with Tau in it. That's why I don't really like it that much. But the Damocles books were enjoyable. The Farsight books were fine. They were the kind of the catalyst for the bad Tau lore, I guess. But I like Farsight. So what are you gonna do? Fire Warrior's cool. All of the old Tau books are cool. Yeah, you know.
And if you read Shadow Sun, brace yourself near the end, because you know what's coming.
I'm not. I'll read it. I'm gonna read it just because I can stay caught up on my Tau lore, but I'm not excited.
Just remember the enthusiasm. Eli said, "I'm gonna read it." So, yeah.
You'll see a short about the Tau God on the channel one of these days.
Oh yeah.
Maybe who knows? Maybe
maybe
the Elemental Council book will be awesome, but it already seems like a nothing burger book to me. I guess we'll find out.
We need the Aounshi revolution.
Please
fix the ship, right the ship, and then we can get back to making the Tau good.
There's a chance that they bring Aounshi back for 11th edition. I'm always hoping for that whenever they take characters away, that they'll bring them back. But who knows? I really have absolutely no idea where they're going to go with Tau lore at this point. And I really hope that they don't expand on the Tau God stuff.
We just need the Emperor to do a Nurgle where he just shoots it with a ray of light and it just disintegrates. Like, all right, enough of that silliness.
Yeah,
off you go. Yeah, the lion goes fighting, I don't know, the Tau, and he gets injured, and then the Emperor inhabits his body briefly and goes, "How did you get wounded by the Tau?" The lion's like, "I know, Dad. Sorry. All right, where's that God thing?" Gone. But yeah, either way, that was good fun.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Fixing 40K.
Thank you, Mr. Andy.
And if you want to check out some more good content, some greater good content, be sure to check out Deadlist for the Dark Gods, because he's my friend and I love him dearly.
I love
but either way, thanks everyone. Until next time. Bye.
Farewell. Love you. Subscribe.
Warhammer, can we fix it? 40K, yes we can!